On right now, and then Ryan will give you an overview of what type of projects we're looking at here in the future. So the dam itself was built in 1920 as a response to a couple of storms and floods that we had a couple of years before that. And the dam allowed flood control, which gave us Brookside Park down there, protection for Brookside Park and the Rose Bowl.
So well, that was before the Rose Bowl was built.
Yes, the dam was here before the Rose Bowl was built. Yes, sorry. Yes. So if you look, basically where these little light poles are over there is where the dam starts. Over to the other side there's more light poles down there. So that we're on the dam right now physically. There's a control house right here, which is what operates the valves for the dam. And I actually do have a picture here from the 30s, which shows you we're right about here. And so this is a historic view of what it looked like before they even built Oak Grove and before the 210 was built over there.
Is this bypass channel still active?
So that's the spillway that's on the dam. It was modified in the 90s, so it looks a little different than it did before.
Yeah, you see that.
Yeah, so that's what it looked like back when it was built, but this is what different configuration today.
And it's still not real good for fish jumping on, right?
That's true. Yeah.
So that thing is full in that picture.
In that picture, it is full. Yes, yeah. So it was actually at spillway elevation, so water was coming out over the spillway. So, like I said, this is the dam right here. The dam was built for flood control purposes and some water conservation. There's some spreading grounds back on the east side of the basin, which I'm sure many of you have seen back there.
Were those spreading grounds part of the original plan?
They were built after the dam was built, so they weren't there originally. But
I don't remember them growing up.
Yeah, they were put in at a later date. Okay. Yes. But so an issue that happens whenever you dam a stream is that there's going to be sediment that's built up behind it. At our spillway elevation right now, we only have about 15% capacity for sediment in there, and so sediment takes up the flood control space that we're looking for, holding back water to prevent flooding downstream. So when the station fire came in, it really impacted how much sediment came into the reservoir, and that was what brought us up to just having 15% capacity below where our spillway is. And so Ryan's going to talk to you a little bit about the projects that we have because of all the sediment that's came in.
15%?
15% below the spillway.
So 85% of the dam's capacity has been
below where our spillway ports are. Yes, by sediment.
Through sediment from the last 90 years.
Yes. Yeah.
When's the last time the water went through the spillway?
The last time, 2005 probably, I think would be the last time we went through, or was there one in recent?
Last year we got pretty close. I think we actually hit spillway. I mean, it was just a real small amount that went over. And that was an average year of rainfall. So even in an average year, we can hit spillway. It depends on the intensity of the storm, how large it ends up coming in.
Now, wasn't there one time when some sediment was removed sometime between now and when the dam was built?
Yeah, many times actually.
Okay, because I thought you just said it. What we have here is...
Yeah, and it's been varying amounts of cleanouts. We just recently, last summer, did a very small, I think it was about 13,000 cubic yards right here at the dam. But it was about 6 or 7 years ago that we did one that was about 250,000 cubic yards.
Okay.
So it's been varying levels that we have done some removal. But yeah, in response to the sediment that is in the reservoir now, we do need to do a larger project to remove the sediment. And so in 2010, after the station fire, we started to initiate the project and look at what we can do for removal of the sediment. And we started an environmental process and impact report last year during the summer, and we did some public meetings, some scoping meetings last October, which we were just trying to gather input from the public as to concerns about our project. That project is kind of outlined in this fact sheet if you guys want more information on it, but it was basically to remove up to 4 million cubic yards from this basin to be able to restore the flood control capacity. And so we're in that process now. We are past those scoping meetings and we're looking at the draft EIR, which means we're looking at alternatives for the basin. So that includes looking at different configurations within the basin, different ways of removing the sediment, and also different ways of access to the dam itself. So for like configurations, we're looking at, are we going to do it right here? The reservoir actually spreads all the way back into close to JPL, no spreading grounds. So we're looking at maybe basins in those back there. Are we going to do some different configurations of avoidance of vegetation? So we're looking at a lot of different configurations, and then different ways to remove the sediment. Methods would be sluicing, which is moving sediment through with water through the system. A conveyor belt system, which means instead of having trucks coming in and out of here, we would move it with a belt out of the basin and collect it somewhere else. trucking is an option, and also like a slurry pipeline. And instead of sluicing it through the channel, we'd send the sediment with water through a pipeline downstream. And so with that, we're trying to look at all these different configurations. A lot of it's in response to the concerns that the public had, and we wanted to be sure that we were looking at everything and also protecting the impacts that we would have to the basin and trying to avoid impacts as much as we can, but also we have the flood control that capacity.
Where does the sediment end up, and where do you take it?
Depending on the method, if we're doing a project right now, the proposed locations would be in the city of Irwindale. There's some pits that are there that need to be filled. They've been mining pits for years. Right. Right. Well, yeah, of course. And then there's also some mining pits that are in the Sun Valley area in the city of Los Angeles, west of here. There's also the Shoal Canyon landfill is one place we take more of the organic waste that we get. Anytime there's like some dead limbs and stuff that's in the sediment itself, and so we take it there. So there's different places we're looking at taking it. Now, if it's a sluicing option, the sediment actually goes downstream into the Arroyo Seco, and you'll collect some of the natural areas, like at the Brookside area. There's that natural area that was rehabilitated just a couple years ago. So some of it will fall out there, but it'll eventually go down towards the Los Angeles River and possibly even to the ocean from there. So it just depends on the method.
Long Beach.
Yeah, it's important. So I guess we'll. Go ahead.
What's your schedule on the draft EIR?
Thank you. I did mean to talk about that, so thanks for bringing that up. So for the draft EIR, we anticipate. There were a lot of comments we did want to make sure we're addressing. So we anticipate having the public meetings and the release of the draft EIR probably by the end of this year. It may change just based on the amount of configurations and the alternatives that we're looking at, but it won't be any sooner than I'd say the end of this year. Maybe this fall. Might be October, November.
How critical is the dam to flood control management?
It's very critical. If we didn't have the dam here, you would likely have the Arroyo Seco, which is the finished parts of the Arroyo Seco downstream. It's not capable of handling. We designed this for what's called a 50-year storm. And so it's a 2% chance any year that a 50-year storm could hit. If that 50-year storm without the dam to attenuate the flows or to stop the flows and slow it down so we can release it, if the channel downstream is deficient, it can't handle it, you would get flooding, and we're actually looking at that right now where all the flooding would be, but it affects some of the residences downstream. And
in which areas?
More like the South Pasadena, Los Angeles areas, and then also the 110 freeway would likely be impacted. There'd be some impact here at the Brookside golf course as well, but really the residences that are a little further downstream is what we're looking at.
Great.
Yeah, if there's further questions, please feel free to.
When you have the water in the lake back here,
Sure.
How much percolation do you get back into the Raymond Basin?
That's a good question. I'm not exactly sure the answer on that, but it's very minimal right here. The reason is you get a lot of the fine silts in this area, and that clogs up all the percolation.
It's more like clay then almost.
Yeah, exactly. So really, those spreading basins that are the upstream side of the basin are more efficient with that because it's higher, it's more granular material. They do what they kind of rip those or tear those every year, so that you can get kind of some it's more easily is able to percolate.
And what's the cost? What if you do your big 4 million cubic yards?
Yeah, correct. Cubic yards.
What's the estimated cost of removing all that?
Yeah, we took a look at that. It depends on the method that's used, of course.
So it must be a range of.
It is a range. I think we're looking at somewhere it could be anywhere between like 30,000 and up to 100,000, somewhere in that range.
I think it'd be more than that.
Billion, no, sorry.
30. Okay.
Wrong.
Billion, trillion.
I was assuming that you just
multiply
100
30 to 200 million?
Yes, correct. And that's a range, and we're still looking at that.
And where does that money come from?
It comes from the flood control district, so there's a tax that's assessed, and so it's for the flood control protection of the community in Los Angeles.
So the community pays in?
Is that part of the water
Every
usage?
parcel owner pays a flood control district tax.
And that's not dependent upon our water usage, it's dependent upon...
It's dependent on if you own property, so it's based upon your property size, and that is what funds the flood control district, which would fund this project.
And that flood control district is basically in Pasadena, Southwest.
It's countywide, except for some
LA
parts.
County?
All of LA County, except for I think it's above like Avenue S in Antelope Valley or Lancaster is where it ends. But everywhere south of that is in the flood control district. So everyone that owns property, their property taxes for the flood control district specifically goes into this.
And this pamphlet does talk more about the flood control district. I mean, I would recommend this one if people are interested. Also, we do look at different ways of funding the project as well, because we want to be using the taxpayers' money as efficiently as we can. So one of the things with the station fire is that there was some FEMA funding that was possibly available, and we've been looking into, and we're still appealing to get some funding for our project from FEMA.
Well, it's just different taxpayers.
True.
More taxpayers, right?
True. But I mean, of course, we do want to look at different ways of funding the project. There's also some IRWIN funding that's available sometimes for some of these projects, which those are water projects, and so as far as the water conservation benefits that would come from the project, there may be some funding there. I mean, it's different, you're right.
When was the last time we had a 50-year flood?
50 years ago.
Well, I mean, on the scale of
49 years ago.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, but I'm wondering, because that's based upon
that's a good
inches
question.
of rainfall per day or something, right?
It's based with the way we look at it, it's a 24-hour rain
Okay.
event, and so it's a number of inches that you would get in that rain event.
So when was the last time that we had
That's a
it?
good question.
2005 qualify for that?
I see. I think it wasn't actually a 50-hour or 50-year on that one. We may have actually never seen it at this reservoir.
Well, actually, doesn't
But
it, as you get silt, the 50 years becomes 20 years or something, right?
well, it looks more like it, but a 50 year is a 50 year regardless. The rainfall that comes down is still a 50
but I mean,
year.
if the capacity
Of course.
The impact.
if the capacity to manage the water is reduced, then the flooding
Right.
would increase even with much less rain.
Well, of course, and the capacity is a major issue for that. I mean, this is designed so that we have a basin and a spillway and our flood control valves through here to be able to operate and control a 50-year storm. Now, something to keep in mind with that is intensity of a storm is very important too, because we're thinking of 24 hours and a certain inches, and I don't know off the top of my head what that is. But you could get a 50-year intensity for an hour, or you could get a 50-year intensity for a 3-hour storm, but it may not be a 24-hour storm.
And on the same note, in a year you can have multiple 10-year storms within 1 year.
Sure.
So just because it's a 10-year frequency doesn't mean it'll only happen once every 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
But you could have 10-year storms in 1 year.
Or
too.
10, 50-year storm.
It could happen. Yes, it could happen. Yes. Yeah.
Are you guys the guys who, when it rains, are you guys the guys who go in there and turn the valves?
No,
Not us specifically, but it is county public works. Yes.
it is public works.
I mean, actually, I'm joking. Is it controlled out of some? Do you have to actually physically come here and
there's
turn
a physical
valves?
dam operator. Yes. Yeah.
But
There's
I
some
don't know
of
that they're physically turning. There's some that are like that, but this one may all be automated.
I think this one's still physical.
Are they physical on this one?
Controlled out of Chicago?
No, everything.
No, it's all the
LA
county.
County. LA County.
So you were talking about how
So you
the
wake that guy up.
bottom of the water, the dam, how it really water can't percolate down through there. Is that just a natural function of basically all dams, or okay? So there's no way to really fix that.
Well, I mean, when we do a clean out, that helps.
Well, of course, but then it's going to happen again.
Even the material that's below where we clean out to is more that clay, silty material.
And that's pretty common then for.
Every dam we have in the county looks like that. You get a range from at the dam. You have the siltier, clayier, fine material, and as you go up, it gets more granule because the larger stuff drops up in the upper watershed.
So there's a guy that we heard from earlier, and he said you guys were evil incarnate because you're going to destroy all the habitat here.
Well, and that's part of the environmental process, is that we're looking at different configurations. Now, there may be some configurations that do affect the vegetation, and some that we're going to do a lot of avoidance, and so that's where we're going through the process.
We heard you were covering 27 acres with 27 feet of new land. 27 feet piled up.
That's not our project, though. No,
That's the
that
city.
might be a different
That's the city
Pasadena.
to make the park more enjoyable.
Our project is solely just to
Change
be able
the usage of
to gain
it.
capacity.
Our project is solely excavation is what we're looking at.
Taking silt out
Judgment
of
call.
it.
Yes, taking
Putting it
sediment,
being sarcastic.
like we said in Irwindale and over in Sun Valley. Yeah.
There's no question of putting it over here.
Well, that's the city of Pasadena's project that they're working on.
You're the guy.
So you're, but you, so he had vocalized an extreme image of 50 acres or some huge number of acres where you're bringing trucks in
Well, 100
and
here all the way up to the top.
Pulling everything out.
scraping everything
This
out
area.
and leaving it sterile and vacant.
Well, I mean, what we're looking at is we do need to remove a certain amount of material
Right.
for capacity. Now, there will be a footprint. Now, we're looking at different configurations so we don't have an acreage. But to be able to get that amount of material, you do need to remove, somewhere between 30 and it could be, more than that, acres.
Yeah.
30, you said to 100.
And then-
you said you're looking at from here all the way up, but that doesn't. You don't have the plan yet.
And something, and maybe this is helpful if any of you want to take this handout, is this is our easement, and this is the impact area for the reservoir. If this is filled to spillway, you're getting water is starting to go up into these areas. I mean, this is the upper end of the spillway. So we're looking at the project within this area, but it doesn't mean we're taking the entire area. It means it's just this is kind of our area. So we're looking at some that are just right here at the dam face.
And then when you're done, do you do some restoration?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and we also, another part of this project is that it's to leave it sustainable so that we can maintain more regularly in the future, because that's been something, I mean, vegetation being here is actually a fault of ours, that we haven't been maintaining this basin. This basin should be maintained, and this, 30 years ago, this vegetation wasn't here. So really it's because over the years we haven't been maintaining. That's another part of this project. We want to make sure that we're doing more.
So if you maintain it properly, there's nothing out there?
Correct.
What? Nothing?
Depends on the configuration. The configuration that we cut out.
So before the
Yeah, we'd
So
have
that's
we'd also
the tension in
if
the
you look at
deal.
a lot of our other basins.
So that's the tension, right? Is that what's grown up through your lack of maintenance now looks like nature and wildlife and beautiful.
And it is, and we do recognize it. It's there, it's established, and we don't want to necessarily just scorch the entire thing. I mean, we want to be sensitive to that, and we understand that. And so that's why we're looking through this environmental process. What's going to meet both the goals that we have as the flood control district and also the concerns and the goals of the public and the recreational users, because it's an awesome basin. There's a lot of use in this basin, a lot of good wildlife in this basin that we want to be sensitive to, of course.
So what would have been here before the dam? What would this look like? A river, or would it have been full of trees, a stream?
It would have been a stream
and
system,
trees in
right?
it and stuff.
If you look more of up what's at the back of the basin, where there's like the real fine cobbles up there, like that, we have some pictures from when before the dam was built and just around the dam was built, and basically it was just that. So I mean, it would be more of, I guess, a more cobbly system. Not the fines would have just kept going all the way through. So there wouldn't necessarily be as many trees, but it would look more like what it does up in the upper end of the basin.